So I'm Sunder Katwala, I'm the Director of British Future. We're an independent think tank interested in identity, immigration and integration, trying to work out whether Britain can become a more confident, inclusive and welcoming society. Well, the debates about identity and immigration and integration are front of mind for a lot of people. There's a lot of anxiety in our society today. We're interested in why people feel anxious about those issues and how we find the common ground that can bring us together. So a lot of work talking to people about those issues, what they feel they're about, as well as holding events, commenting about some of the challenges we face in terms of high levels of immigration, shock events that happen as well and that disrupt people's sense of confidence. I think the question we're discussing here at the festival, immigration and the city, is a really interesting one because cities are the places of fast change, of churn, of most challenge in a way at a time of high change. They've got to deal with those pressures, but they're also the places of most confidence. So maybe the pressures are real, but we get the contact that makes us feel that we can build something. Cities have always been places of immigration. So I think there are real world challenges in the city to get a grip so that people feel it's fair, school places, housing and so on. But maybe there are challenges beyond the city as well, because if the city feels confident about how immigration is going, but further away from the city people are more anxious about the state of the nation. What do people who like diversity, like change, like that challenge do? Can they talk to people who see the world differently? Can we find common ground about that with people who feel more anxious? I think the thing that really happens on a really local level is you feel more confident about a place if you know your neighbours, and so contact is really important. Resilience is also about the fact that if things happen that are difficult and challenging, we've seen shock events like the terrorism in Paris just this week. The quality of those relationships really make a lot of difference to your resilience, because if you're sharing a close press space with people who you feel are different, you don't know who they are and you don't know how you get on, then you won't have that resilience, you'll have that sense of separateness. Whereas otherwise, I think you can turn around and say this is an attempt to divide people and we choose to respond to it together. But you need to have relationships if you're going to respond to something together. Yes, and I think those comparisons are very important, because you can find places maybe where, if the schools are more mixed in one place and more separate in another, that might be an important indicator but places are handling different levels of change. But the big contrast as well, I think, is between, as I say, the confidence, I think, of most cities that they know about the pace of change, they know it's speeding up, but they also know that they've been there before. And the other places on the edges of cities and outside the cities that are now probably experience this for the first time. Immigration's not just higher, it's more spread out now. And can the cities kind of have an empathy for how that feels? It's probably what happened in the city maybe in the 18th century or in the 19th century for the first time, in a way that doesn't make people feel that it's the people who go to the cities who like change and that everybody else is fearful and anxious about it. So I think that contrast, that comparison between the city and what goes on beyond the city limits is really important. I don't think it's helpful to say to somebody, you're worried, but I don't think your worry is well founded. Here are some statistics, here's a graph. I think it's very important that policy, national and local level, is built on facts, not misperceptions. But if people believe things that are exaggerated or untrue, it's because there's an underlying worry. And saying to somebody, look, I know you're worried, but I'm just worried about the fact that you're worried. Look at my statistics and you'll feel okay. People respond to that by saying, well, I've always known it works for people like you. Maybe you look like the sort of political class or the academic class and so on. And now I'm picking up that you just think that people like me are making up that we're worried. Whereas actually what most people think is that there are both pressures and gains of change. And if the fact says maybe people come here and they pay in more than they pay out, people have still got a very reasonable question of, are those resources coming to where I live? Because this is where the pressure is. Also, actually, a lot of the things that people say that are positive to talk people out of these misperceptions, that they pay in more, diversity are good for us, they're challenging sort of them and us stories with they are good for us stories. And that actually isn't what we need. It's what's the us now? And what do we do together? So I'd much rather say to people, it's a perfectly reasonable concern that you're raising about are there fair chances for our kids? Are we a shared society or a segregated one? That's going to be important, that income is a part of that, and we'll all have to be part of that. So what do we do together? So I think telling people what they're right about, rather than always just pointing out the factual errors that drive, some of those misperceptions and anxieties.